Debris Symposium Happy Hour.
Happy hour.
We hope that y'all enjoyed the day, and we hope you enjoy this session. It'll be very interactive. We're going to allow our happy hour hostess with the mostest give you an introduction of themselves and the work that they do and the projects they're working on, and just allow them the space to coordinate this session with you as the attendees. And so please, like I said before, and if you missed it, please feel free to turn your video on, get comfortable, unmute yourself and ask questions throughout. Don't be shy and use the chat. We want to see your face.
Bring it.
All right, ladies, I'm turning this over to you.
Okay, cool. Who wants to go first? Would you like to go first? I think you should go first because you've got some really awesome information to share with anybody that's watching right now. And then I will bring up the rear on, more cleanup and stuff like that. What do you say? What do you say?
Okay, let's do it.
Genevieve. Okay.
All right. Lisa / Bonnie, is it okay if I share my screen? I did make some
Absolutely.
stuff.
Let me just make sure you are, yeah, you're good.
That I have the power.
You have the power.
Okay, let's see. Can y'all see this?
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm Genevieve Gulizada, and my project is From Shores to Shoes, and it's the design and creation of beach running shoes made out of waste materials found on the North Carolina coast. And here we go. Okay, so again, my name is Genevieve. I was born and raised in Raleigh.
Recording in progress.
Oh, sorry.
It's not you.
Oh, okay, we're good. Okay, I was born and raised in Raleigh. I grew up going to Wrightsville Beach every summer with my family. I just really love North Carolina and appreciate all that it has to offer. I graduated from NC State in 2016, where I studied sport management, and I'm actually back on campus now in pursuit of my Master's of Industrial Design with a focus in footwear design. And so my project as a whole wouldn't be possible had it not been for a $5,000 grant that was awarded to me by an organization called Women in Sports Tech. And it's an incredible, there aren't even words to properly describe this community of women. Anyways, but the nonprofit itself, it's committed to driving transformative growth for women. Okay, committed to driving transformative growth and creating opportunities, sorry, I always butcher it, for women in the sports tech landscape at any stage of their career. And so the point of my project is to solve two problems. The first is marine debris, which all of you know about, or else you wouldn't be here, so I won't go into all the details, but the most startling statistic that just really stays in the front, back, all over my mind is that by 2050, there will be more plastic than fish in the world's oceans. And then the second problem is, and I don't know why it's not loading. Okay, the footwear industry. So the fashion industry is the second largest polluter in the world, and shoes are responsible for 1/5 of that environmental impact. With my concentration in footwear design, I actually had the opportunity to go to Asia on a shoe factory tour. It was more so just like quality control, checking in, checking samples. And although the trip itself was really incredible, it was also horrifying because I had never seen such greenwashing. And it wasn't so much the factories themselves, but it was really the companies behind it. So sorry, it always just startles me. Anyways, but it's just the fact that these companies, they're using all these buzzwords. So like organic, fair trade, sustainable, for the sole purpose of making a purchase with complete disregard to the environment itself. So my project really encompasses these two passions of mine. So finding a solution to marine debris and responsible footwear design. And so for the grant, I had to create this really intensive proposal, and within that was a timeline which divided my project into 4 different phases. So the first being ideation, the second on-site research, the third digital design and prototyping, and then the fourth is fabrication and physical modeling. And each phase had key objectives. And mind you, these dates are for 2020, and I left them up just because it makes me laugh every time I see them. The fact that I was naive enough to, one, think that I would be able to successfully design and create a running shoe in however many months, and also somehow gain all of the knowledge necessary, and I guess on the entire topic of marine debris. Okay, so the first 2 phases, ideation and on-site research, consisted of conducting research and then also creating and delivering surveys. I read pretty much anything and everything that there was to read, whether it was news outlets or scholarly journals that I had access to through NC State's libraries. And so one of the journals that I found was particularly interesting measured the amount of microfiber released during the laundering process of synthetic and then recycled synthetic textiles. And the study found that recycled polyester released 2.3 times the amount of fibers than virgin polyester. So a lot of these big brands like Lululemon, who are really pushing these green initiatives by using recycled polyester, are in fact and potentially just causing a lot more harm than good. And so switching gears with the surveys, the percentages that you see on the right of the screen, this one came from a survey targeted to runners, and it was really just to gauge their preference and overall interest when buying a running shoe. And so we had about 100 participants, and of the 100, 71.7% said that support was the most important quality that they look for in a beach running shoe, which is particularly important when designing a successful beach running shoe, just because in order to maximize the benefits of beach running, it has to meet a very specific criteria. So the shoe itself has to allow for full range of motion. The foot has to be able to respond to the uneven terrain, just the contours of the sand. And so support is integral in preventing any sort of injury. Okay, so I was able to conduct a lot of interviews and phone calls with industry professionals. This was a great opportunity for me, not only to just gain insight from people who have been in the industry a lot longer than I have, not a lot longer, but anyways, and then also just to meet like-minded people, because it seems like, and I've only been in it since last May, but it seems like there are a lot more maybe disheartening moments than there are motivating. So just meeting people who have been able to share their experiences with me and just teach me maybe what they've learned, how it's best to appeal to people who aren't as like-minded. Anyway, so of these people, I was able to talk with Todd Miller and Sarah Hallis from the North Carolina Coastal Federation, Kelsey Halling from Thread International, which is an organization that incentivizes waste collection in low-income communities, and then through their extremely regulated supply chain, they're able to take that waste collection and have it processed and transformed into usable textiles that they then sell to big brands such as Reebok and Timberland, and last but not least, the Queen herself. And so a few of the key takeaways, I won't read them all, but my interview with Mr. Miller is what really got the ball rolling on this entire project. One, because he was able to put me in touch with people who were able to put me in touch with other people. But my purpose of meeting with him was really to find out which material was the most prevalent, I guess, amongst all of the cleanups. And so he told me that storm debris, just like the treated wood from docks and piers that become dislodged during the storms, the materials that they used to treat, I guess, the wood itself to make it so durable, it ends up just floating around in the water, which obviously is not great because then those toxins just leach out. And then my conversation with Kelsey Halling from Thread International, was really threw me off because I guess my image or dream for my company was that I would be able to raise capital, and then with that capital, I would be able to fund a fleet of boats to go into the water off of Wrightsville and collect all the plastic that they could. But then she told me that in order to 3D knit and print essentially shoes, the material that you use has to be of the highest quality, or else it would break the machines. So she told me that my best bet was using ocean-bound plastic and just really intercepting the plastic before it even gets to the water itself. So that is my plan moving forward. Okay, I am still firmly situated in the design phase or in the research phase, but I was invited to submit my project for a pitch playoff last December. And for it, I had to include a visual of my project. And like I said, this is not the final, but it does maybe encompass some, I'm trying to think of the right word. Yeah, encompass some of the qualities that I do want the final iteration to have. So the segmented sole that allows for the full range of motion and just for the foot to be able to really respond properly to the contours of the sand. It's also really important to me that the shoe itself is fully circular. So at the end of its life, when the customer is done with it, I don't by any means want it to end up in the trash. I would like the customers to send it back to me so then I can take it apart and then upcycle it and use it to make more shoes. And then my next steps, I actually did my first ever cleanup a few weeks ago with Pop, and it was amazing. So I would like to do more of those. I am currently seeking more funding and applying to other grants just because, as I'm sure all of you know, this is the research that is required to build a successful project requires money. And then I just need to do more research across the board. It feels like the more research I do, the more research I have to do. And that is it.
That was good. Yeah, it was such a great opportunity to meet you, Genevieve. I don't often get a chance to run into people like yourself that's like, okay, what do we do with this stuff? You know, we have a lot of advocacy and, you know, government changes or, you know, working with industry that are actually, you know, coming up with alternatives like turning it into fuel or whatever. But, you know, my whole dream with especially Plastic Ocean Project is to inspire young people like yourself to come up with these ideas, to give them a platform to explore. And, you know, like this is the chance to do it. And the fact that you are taking this on totally, you know, just understanding there's a problem and I want to try to fix it. And I kind of did have an idea that that has been roaming around in my head for a very, very long time. And I was thinking I could pitch it to you and see if this could be like something that kind of separates yourself from the pack. So with this design that you want for the bottom, for it to be very flexible, I'm guessing it's going to be kind of like segmented, right? So kind of, you know, like tire tracks kind of look.
Right.
What if you would be able to have words on the bottom? So when you're running on the beach, it's one foot says don't, the other says litter or stop litter, or so it's actually going into the sand and messaging. And
yeah, that would be cool.
Messages on the bottom that goes on the, or peace and love, peace and love, peace and love. You know, like how fun would that be? And you could do that.
That would be very fun.
I think your concept would work, and people would be all about that idea of, you know, fun. They could order their shoe and they could order the message that they want on the bottom. And, you know, it'd have, oh my God. So there you go. That's my addition to your really cool idea.
No, I do think it's a great idea, especially that sort of kind of like guerrilla marketing. And since I wanted 3D print the soles or pretty much the shoe itself, we would be able to do whatever words we want. The options are endless.
Yes. Yes. Social justice, social justice, social justice. You could do so many cool things, man.
I'm writing that down.
But you got to give 10% to Plastic Ocean.
All of it.
I have to go get my beverage. I'm a little behind. But do ask more questions, people.
I've got a question. Do you, when you're talking about maybe being able to utilize ocean-bound plastics, what does that look like? Is it plastics that you try to get out of rivers that are headed to the ocean, or how would you get that material?
Right. So since I'm in Raleigh, I actually, strangely enough, became good friends with it's GFL now, but it had been Waste Industries, their CEO. So I'm hoping to be able, just to be completely transparent, apparently in Raleigh, the recycling and then the trash itself, they end up at the same landfill. There's no true recycling facility. So my plan now is to somehow finagle a partnership to be able to actually take the recyclable products. That's in Raleigh.
And it may have to be a percentage too, right? Like it may not be the entire shoe, maybe just one part of the shoe, maybe it's just the bottom. Yeah, I mean, we find how many tires, Lisa? We're always finding tires. Like, could you, use a portion of like the rubber from tires, like there's just throwing ideas out there. I'm sorry, I cut you off, Heather. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that, I wonder if what GFL was talking about in that case. I mean, there are definitely markets for plastics that are collected through Raleigh MRFs, and that is going to market. There have been some challenges marketing what they're calling 3 through 7 bales, which it's the non-bottle PET, non-bottle HDPE plastics that I wonder, like when markets are really dried up for those, sometimes they are landfill bound, unfortunately. But number one, just wanted to make sure that we do know, we do know that there are markets, strong markets, especially in the Southeast. Nina mentioned that earlier today about, just how many we do have for some types of plastic. Do you know what type of plastic that you'd be able to utilize in the shoe, or does it depend on where you put it in the shoe type of thing? Does it have to be a certain kind, or could it be one of these blended, or hard to recycle materials that's like another outlet for it that we don't already have a market for?
So I know that some of the brands, so Rothy's, they claim, and I say claim just because it's hard to know which brands are greenwashing and which aren't, but Rothy's claims that they use PET, which is what a lot of the plastic bottles are made out of. But Bonnie, a few weeks ago, mentioned fishing line, which I've been doing some research on. But really, at the end of the day, I just want to make a genuinely positive impact. So I am open to pretty much any and every material.
And we're very lucky because we have someone on this call right now that is very knowledgeable about polymers. And I'm really hoping Scott will have a little comment to make about what we find in the environment. He's on the West Coast, so he's helping with the cleanup initiative that's still coming in from the tsunami 10 years ago. And so he's seeing a lot of stuff washing up. And he also knows a lot about the chemistry of plastic. So Scott, would you want to say anything?
A little about the chemistry.
I actually took a picture of your presentation yesterday and sent it to, we have 2 courses of materials and processes. And one of the sections is about plastic. And I sent it to my professor because we talk about all of the life cycle. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you. That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and clearly, there's different materials work better for different applications. I wouldn't necessarily give up on ocean plastics, but they might have to go through a different process to make them suitable for such a high-end application. I know we've we've been working on mechanical recycling mostly right now, but we've got a partnership with BioSelection, which just rebranded as Nova Loops this week, and they actually take degraded polyethylene, which or any polyethylene, waste polyethylene, but their process further degrades it oxidatively, which is what happens in the environment as well. So their process is really well suited for ocean plastic in order to take that material, break it down, and convert it into the raw materials for making polyurethanes, which might be more useful for a shoe application.
Novolux?
Nova Loop, NOVOLOOP.
Yeah, so the idea about the polypropylene from fishing line, you know, it's one of the harder materials to recycle, would you not say?
From fishing line?
Yeah.
Well, you know, it depends. You know, if it's end of life, it's pretty clean, and I think that's reasonably workable. There, a lot of the materials we've looked at have been copolymers with HDPE, so it depends on the application whether that's okay to have the polyethylene component in with the line, and then the nets. You know, the nets can be, well, a lot of the trawl nets are polyethylene. But you know, if you're looking at nylons, you can get into some of the gill nets and things like that, I believe, or some of the set nets for gill. I'm not as familiar with all all the fishing applications, but the set nets, I believe, are more like a nylon based, and I think others are using those into shoe applications already. So.
And because we have that type of fishing here in North Carolina, we might be able to connect with like a depository where people can, like, when their net is tore up or they're not using it, it's a place that they could leave it and then you could use it, you know, so you could even create some kind of loop for that. And also the fishing line too, I just do feel like there's got to be something that we can use with polypropylene, and most of it is. And then that's the other thing, we could get some samples and Pop could test them because we have that fancy instrument that does that kind of thing. So
have you all heard of? Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, so you know what you were dealing with for the most part.
Getting into. Have you all heard of Burio?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, they're using.
Yeah.
I think they're using both the polypropylene and the nylons, if I remember right.
Yes. So that might be a good model to look at.
And I think pretty much whatever brand is doing what I would like to be doing, I've stalked them and done all the research, but I'm pretty sure that they incentivize the fishermen to bring their nets to them, even if they're broken or at end of life. So
yeah, and you're talking about a poor economy, right? So the folks that they're giving probably minuscule amount of money to for those nets, where, you know, like that, you kind of have to factor that in, you know, if you were to do something like that.
right.
So, you know, I'm thinking, you know, there's so much technology that's coming out now with, you know, putting tracking devices on nets and traps. What if we had, like, you bring in your net and you get a free tracking device, and we work with the industry that's making the tracking device. So like it's this, you know, promoting what they're doing, you know, like, so a certain number of nets will get one of these devices, the new nets that they put in the water. And you're getting the old nets, so you create this really cool, you know, little inner economy. And I mean, GoPro gives away so many GoPros, right? And they do it to promote GoPro. So imagine if that was part of that promotional, where these fishermen would then be able to track the nets that they put in the water, because they do get lost. And that in turn, because they're tracked, and if they're damaged, they give them to you because they're not losing them in the ocean. Liking this. I need to drink a little more.
Liking this.
Keep
I
going.
need to get a pen that works. I think that's what has been interesting for me to talk to like Todd Miller about finding how to appeal to people who maybe aren't as environmentally minded. What would convince them to buy a product that maybe has a greener ethos than others?
Right. So this tracking device is really just so they don't lose what they've invested in, right? So it's not saying you got to put a tracking device so you don't kill whales. Tracking device you're promoting because you want that net when it's done. And so that way you kind of mitigate all that conversation about saving whales, you know, or sea turtles, which they really don't want to hear for the most part. Am I right, Lisa? Oh, she's not there.
She said she might be driving for part of this, so.
Okay, well, so one of the things is, this is kind of an interesting story why I throw that out about sea turtles. I've been working with these folks that are trying to stop all the tree loss that we're having in North Carolina, because there's a company called Enviva that is literally taking 100 acres of trees in North Carolina a day. And a day, yeah, I said a day, and it's actually higher than that, but you get to the point where people are like, that's not true. But we can go with 100 acres a day, and that is full on true. And so anyway, I went to a hearing and I met this gentleman that does a lot of ecology work here in Wilmington. And he said this really interesting story to me, and it really gave me hope. He said, you know, when I moved here in the 80s, most of the people hated sea turtles. Like the fishermen hated sea turtles because they get caught up in their net and they make a mess and they're a pain in the neck and they eat fish and blah, blah, blah. And that Wrightsville Beach was a disaster. It was covered with litter. So no one loved sea turtles, and the beach was covered in trash. And today, and you know, because you were at Wrightsville Beach, Genevieve, it's one of the cleanest beaches you'll ever visit. It is spectacular, and a lot of that has to do with the people that are there constantly cleaning it. But the other part is we just don't have that much of a debris problem washing in from the ocean like what Scott witnesses. So he said, the beach is one of the cleanest you'll ever visit, and there are people patrolling the beach to protect the turtles. So since 1980s, that all shifted. So now there is this love for the sea turtles, as you know, and there's a movement to protect them. So that kind of really angers people that still hate sea turtles. So they don't want to hear, I want to save the turtles. So with your angle, it would be, I'm not about saving the sea turtles. I'm about saving the net, because I want that net when you're done with it. And see, that would speak to that audience that you're trying to appeal to. And then there's less debris in the ocean, and then it gives those marine animals a break from so many nets. And I mean, really, you could start something spectacular here.
I have so many pages. I'm ready for more ideas.
Yeah, bring it. Come on, Heather. You got something going on over there. I can see your thing lighting up.
Well, I mean, I just don't, it's maybe not even shoe related. But I'm just sort of curious about, what are nets primarily made out of? I mean, Scott, are those usually a nylon based thing, or they're hybrid, or what are they?
There's a lot of different structures. It depends how the net's used. I'd say I'm still learning more about that. We're actually working with a student up at Western Washington to kind of catalog all of the different types of structures and the different lines that are used to create the nets. But you know, mostly what we find are polyethylene net, and most of what we're finding is trawl net. I think trawl nets have a higher incidence of loss. And then most of the line that we find is polypropylene, and it's a polypropylene polyethylene blend. There certainly are nylon nets, and what's good is it seems to be there's a decent market for them too. So end of life, a lot of those are getting back into the economy. So, but yeah, what we find on our cleanups are mostly the polyethylene nets.
And that would make sense because they float, right? So they're going to make it onto your beaches where you're doing your cleanups.
Yeah.
There are nets that sink, right? So they're made of heavier materials, and those are the ones that get wrapped around coral reefs and around, you know, like ships, right? Lisa could tell us a story about one of the wrecks that she likes to visit, and she wasn't able to go to it for about a year because it was encased in a net. So some of them do sink and some of them float. Obviously, the ones that float are much easier to get to. When I was sailing across the North Pacific, we came across this huge wad of net and we pulled it in, and the boat I was on had an A-frame, so we were able to pull it out. It was several hundred pounds. Had 7 different types of fishing gear wrapped up in it. So even though they were all, you know, made out of something that allowed them to float, it didn't come from one vessel. It came from many different. And then Charlie Moore's theory is that like things travel across the ocean at the same speed, and so they end up somehow catching up with each other. And it was absolutely mind-bending how big this thing was. And when we saw it, actually he saw it, we didn't, it was barely breaking the surface, right? So you barely can see this thing. And underneath in the water column, it probably went down 9 feet. It was just this wad, and it was an ecosystem. It was an artificial reef. I mean, there were tropical fish in this thing, and we were thousands of miles away from land, right? So it's a problem. It's not just a problem for marine life. We could have ran over it in the middle of the night, and our prop would have been completely entangled in it. And there's a theory that we're losing about 100 sailboats a year, and this is an old statistic. And it could be because of, you know, the trash that's in the ocean, whether it be containers that are floating and people are running into them and they're sinking very quickly. But I can tell you that not once, but twice while we were out there for a month, we got entangled in ghost gear, and it shut down. I mean, it locked down our engine. It stopped our prop, and both were in the middle of the night like a horror film, right? So you're tooling along and all of a sudden clunk, and like everything goes out for a minute, you know, or a couple seconds, and then you have to like, what the hell just happened, you know? So our captain and first mate had to go underneath the boat in the middle of the night to see what's going on, and it's very traumatic, scary, and it's important. It's a navigational hazard, and especially, you know, for people we care about, let alone the animals. So it's another angle for why this would be a good area for you to target. Not only that, a new report came out, or paper came out, saying that it's actually the fishing gear that is the most abundant in the ocean. And I don't agree with that. I think that it's a poor assessment. How could you possibly compare it to individual things that are floating around the ocean? Like I just said, you know, this one net was several hundred pounds, really easy to get. It wasn't all in one place. We could pull it out. But, you know, to capture all of the stuff that we saw that we were not able to collect, I just don't know that it's comparing apples to apples. But that publication could also work in favor for what you're trying to do. I hate looking at myself. I just can't look. Larry Baldwin, you are on this call, I think. Larry? No? Yes, no? Okay. Because Larry could also.
Yeah, I am. I'm here.
Okay, good. Because I think, you know, you could speak to some of this about just the derelict gear, as well as, you know, the importance of our fishing in North Carolina. You know, we have what, 200 miles of oceanfront, and you know, we have one of the strongest markets on the East Coast as far as commercially important fish. And you know, I think you could feed into this conversation quite nicely.
Yeah, we do. And over the past, I don't know, 2.5 years, been working, just talking with the commercial fishing community as a whole. And, you know, they're very concerned about a lot of the things that you all have already talked about. And I'll relate one story to you. And I know Becca and Lisa have heard, well, they actually heard it in person. 2 years ago, I guess it was, we had Governor Cooper's wife come down east to the bridge down east to do a little almost like community meeting with some of the commercial fishermen in the area. So we had a panel of 4 fishing related folks there. And, you know, they were kind of talking through their concerns, and to hear these guys who, you know, obviously they're hardworking people, but talk about things like endocrine disruptors and impacts from upstream. And then, you know, as I've gone through this process, is just hear them talk about the things that they hate about some of the things either they're being accused of falsely or that they may have some impact on. And you have been mentioning the nets. I think one of the things that has come out of this for me pretty starkly is that there's a lot of uninformed misinformation that's kind of out there circulating. I think the commercial fishing and the recreational fishermen as well too, they're very concerned about water quality, and it's an area that we're trying to explore with them. But you know, they also are trying to look at things like bycatch and how their nets impact the fisheries as a whole. So I think, Bonnie, kind of moving forward with any of these discussions, it's going to be pretty valuable, I think, to bring some of these commercial fishing entities into this conversation. You know, we may not always see completely eye to eye with them as far as what we feel some of the issues are, but this is their livelihood. And, you know, earlier when I mentioned the issue with antibiotics as it relates to plastic, microplastics, you know, these folks are very concerned about the quality of fish that they're catching now and what's in the future. So I guess, you know, my nutshell version of an answer for you, Bonnie, is that we need to bring these folks into the conversation. I think they may have some maybe unconventional solutions or suggestions to some of the problems.
I agree. And, you know, we do this fishing for plastic tournaments, as you know, Larry, because you have participated.
Yes.
And it really is magical. And not just because we're plucking trash out of the ocean, but we're having conversations with people we would never have a conversation with. And
Exactly.
so to talk to these fishermen, I mean, they care about that ocean as much as we do, you know, and they've been demonized in some respects, and there's a lot of finger pointing in a lot of different directions, but you'll learn something when you listen, you know, instead of talk to. It's also, you know, when we take the time to listen.
Yeah, and I really think that's the key, Bonnie, is that, you know, there's no one sector who's going to solve this problem on their own. You know, obviously the people who have been on this symposium this far, which has been pretty impressive group of people when you just kind of scan across who's here, much less than the presenters, but then those unconventional relationships that, and to be honest with you, when I first started trying to get involved with the commercial fishermen, there were a lot of stop signs, a lot of barriers that went up. So it's a matter of building that trust to say, we're not here to slit your throat or slit your nets. We're here to try to figure out how we can work through this together so that everybody wins in the end.
Yeah. One of my most precious conversations that I had with one of the fishermen, and you'll appreciate this, Larry, we were talking about the shrimp trawlers, and I'm part of the North Carolina Wildlife Federation, so this is one of their big pet peeves. And so, you know, while I'm out there on the water, I'm asking them, you know, how do you feel about the inshore trawlers? And really interesting answer. It was, you know, Bonnie, when I first moved here, there were 3 times as many. And now we're down to a couple of families that are doing this. And he said, if you ask me what's happened to the spawning, it's because of the hog farms. Like,
Exactly.
I
We
was
heard that.
like, oh my God, you know, like I did not see that coming.
Yeah,
Okay.
and for those of you who don't know, the hog farm issue, CAFO's poultry, has been kind of my thing for 18 years now. But yeah, we heard the same thing when they met with Governor Cooper's wife. And an interesting, talking about the shrimp trawlers, there again, there may be some misconception. You know, I think people feel like these trawlers are just basically, you know, scouring the bottom, when in fact there's just I think they call them tickler chains that hang down that forces the shrimp to jump up. But and Lisa or Becca may remember, there was one of the ladies on the panel said, you know, you can also almost think about these trawlers as almost like a farmer preparing the field for planting. And one of the things that they talk about is the hardening of the bottom. And I know we're kind of getting off the plastic thing, but I think, you know, basically my comment is there's a lot to learn. And I think, Bonnie, I can tell you, you know, you have an open mind as much as anybody I know. So I think it's great that, you know, this has become a part of this conversation. It's a very unique, but also they're a very smart part of the community that probably know more about the water than most of us do.
Yeah, I tell that to my students. I said, you know, like when we try to find plastic in the ocean, right, there are a couple of fishermen that we go to, right? The scientists couldn't get there. In fact, we did a fishing for plastic tournament with 3 universities. And Duke had their own boat. Like I didn't hire, you know, because they had their own boat, so I didn't hire someone for them.
Right.
That captain did not have a clue where to look.
But the
They
fishermen
went on the
did.
shore, but the fishermen, they know, well, because where the plastic is often where the fish are, because they're in those convergence zones where the warm and cold water meet. And, you know, they're looking at all kinds of like wind patterns. And so they know exactly where we need to be in order to find the sargassum, in order to find the plastic, because that also tends to mire in the same location.
Yeah, and if you recall, the one year you asked us to fly out the day, I think it was the day before, 2 days before, and it's not as easy as you might think to know where these things are happening. But these fishermen, they know, and not just the commercial guys, the recreational guys know it as well too.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. I mean, my favorite captain will not give us his winning formula. I have tried everything and he will not tell, but he is the best at finding the trash. So his teams were usually the Wolf Pack ones from NC State.
Right.
Is that what they're called? Wolf Pack or Wolf something? And so he took the high school kids out one year, and then he took the undergraduates and graduates another, and they always bring in the most amount of stuff. And I try to go to him as much as possible, but he just has a center console, so he doesn't have like a cabin or anything. So with my film crew, it makes it tough because their gear really can't get wet.
Sure.
But he is really incredible, and he's from Pennsylvania, so.
Yeah, but
so he's not really native, but he's made himself native here.
Yeah, but thank you for bringing that aspect of what I guess we call these unconventional relationships, or to be a part of this. I think that's great moving forward.
Yeah, agreed.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Yep. Well, without further ado, if you'd like, we can move on to the Trees for Trash campaign. I think I need a little more wine. No. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and nothing too fancy, but it's just an example about how we can solve a couple of problems at the same time. Someone's buzzing me. And so much like what Genevieve is trying to do, you know, make a shoe and make a difference. we came up with the idea of our Trees for Trash campaign after Hurricane Florence. So recognizing that we lost hundreds of old growth trees due to that storm, due to climate change, because that wasn't a horrible storm as far as wind goes. But what had happened was, as the ocean keeps warming, you know, whatever it evaporates, that water has to come down. And we had 3 feet of rain land in our area. And what that meant was an enormous amount of flooding. And because the ground was already quite saturated, our trees started coming down. And our trees are one of the greatest defenses against those storms going inland even further. And then, you know, we've got the Inviva people that are cutting down our trees, but I will leave that out right now. So anyway, we kept seeing, you know, all these trees that had come down. And then when we did the cleanups, there was just so much trash. So I have this really awesome video of us going about 30 miles, not 30, maybe 15 miles from here, very small community, Burgaw, that, you know, it's such a small community, they don't have a lot of money in their coffers for cleaning up the debris. And there's this one road that many residents live on, but because it's a private road, they were not going to pick up the trash. And I'm telling you, this was a mile long by probably 20 feet high of trash that ended up being piled up on the corner so that it would be like in the city or on the main drag, so they would clean it up. And the county said, we're not picking that up. We don't have the money for it. So there was this huge outpour from all communities, like, yeah, you need to clean that up. I mean, that's part of why people pay taxes. So I had gone up there like on a Sunday and I video recorded just how much debris. And I think it had like 10,000 hits. It went completely viral. And not only that, the newspaper and the local press picked it up, and it was on like the news, the same footage I shot. They didn't use my footage, but, you know, highlighting that this stuff had to be picked up. So we found the owners of the property and said that, you know, after they cleaned it all up, there was still like so much debris left behind, you know, the little teeny tiny bits of things that, you know, big wreckers wouldn't be able to pick up. So we went back there, and like every month we were picking up about 1,700 pounds of trash just from this one site, just from this one storm. So that's when we recognized that, you know, if we could create a program that would remove what didn't belong and replace what did, then maybe we could get some funding to really get this thing started. So we called it Trees for Trash, and we started quantifying how much trash we were picking up from our collection, and then we would calculate every 25 pounds of trash we'd plant 1 tree. And so you can see the very first year we did it, we planted over 1,500 trees. And one of the first sites that we planted was actually at our local landfill, which is so weird, right? But we did that because they had lost so many of their trees that they needed as a barrier around the landfill. So we planted a bunch there. Plus we had funded some plantings working with the Alliance for Cape Fear Trees, which is a nonprofit that works locally to plant trees not only in less fortunate locations, but also they have, like, if you lose somebody and you want to do something in their honor, you can have a tree planted. So we had several of those planted for people that have donated to Plastic Ocean Project. So what you're looking at here is our website. You can see last year how much trash we collected. Now, the first year we had actually collected over 2 tons of trash, over 8,000 pounds of trash. Due to COVID, it really did put a damper in how many cleanups we were doing. We usually plant more trees than the numbers that we target, and that's because we have an opportunity to do so. So what would be one of those opportunities? We actually had somebody reach out to us and say, hey, Bonnie, I've got over 100 saplings in my backyard that I need to get rid of. Would you take them? So those are free. And so we were able to take those saplings and plant them. And then also just being a part of some initiatives that are happening right now this year. And one is that Wilmington has a tree initiative. So they are planting 1,700 and I can never remember the number, 1,738 trees. And that's the year that Wilmington was formed. So they're doing this as a way of quantifying the year that Wilmington was formed with the number of trees. So we decided instead of us just, buying more trees and planting them here or there, we would give them the funds in order to plant the trees where they needed to be in order to build our urban forest. So that was one of the ways that we contributed. And the other is through the Alliance for Cape Fear Trees. And because they're already doing this, instead of us reinventing the wheel, we help support those that are planting trees. We know nothing about planting trees, so you really need to work with people that know how to do that. Okay, so you can see here that this year already how much trash we've collected. So already we've collected over a half a ton of trees, or half a ton of trash. This is going to be an epic year because we're now lining up with other nonprofit organizations that want to join us. And one of those is North Carolina Wildlife Federation. So they recognize what a great idea, Bonnie, how can we partner with you? So now they're taking the same model and they're applying it to the work that they're doing across the state. And that just really makes us proud that something that we started with this very small nonprofit is growing in a lot of different directions. And it doesn't just have to be NC State people, like anybody else that's interested that wants to be a part of this, come on, join us. This is really great. And I'm going to tell you why. So you all know, everybody that's on this panel has picked up trash. And it makes you feel good that you're doing it, but it always makes you feel bad that there's so much of it. It just is one of those things that you're like, why? Why, right? But when you plant a tree, there's no why, there's no questioning. It just is a feel good all under, So this is why we need more people to do this. And we really do need to reforest our state because quite frankly, even though the Forest Service would not tell you this, they count anything that this corporation puts back in the ground as a forest. I mean, this is just shocking to me. Like, how can your North Carolina Forest Service count something that's planted that is typically a monoculture, right? Because they're just planting the same trees. And anybody that knows anything about forests, which I don't know a whole lot about, but I know that you cannot replant a forest. Like, it takes centuries for a forest to be planted. So at least we can be part of that, which we'll probably never see in its entirety, but at least we will be the ones that are replanting the forest for real. So I'm going to stop talking and have a little more of my wine, and I would love to open this up for conversation.
Bonnie, I can't see the chart because
Oh, come on.
my eyeballs are stretched, but are those tree species? Is that what that is, or?
Oh, what you're seeing on the screen? Yeah, because it's really tiny, and I apologize for that. No, these are like how much trash and how many trees. So like you'll see that we collected 5,328 pounds of trash in 2020. And we were supposed to plant 214 trees, but we probably planted more like 2,000. And then this year, you can see on the other, which you can't see because it's so small, we've already collected 2,092.9 pounds of trash. So we're destined to plant 84 trees at this point in time when we're barely in February. So that's what that is. And yes, we plant all native trees. That's really important to us, that whatever we're funding, we're not funding for exotic trees, like palm trees that do not belong in North Carolina. So yeah.
Hey, that's so cool, Bonnie. I moved downstairs. Excuse my Christmas decorations that have not come down yet. I've kind of like bonded with them now at this point.
Yeah, if they're not there, you feel kind of lonely. You know?
I do, yeah. I was wondering, and sorry if I missed this, I was grabbing a snack. What organizations did you say you were working with? Where are you getting the trees from?
Well, we've been getting the trees from the tree service here in North Carolina.
Okay, cool.
And then from there, we have been now working with other nonprofits that's what they do. You know, they plant trees. So
Right.
now we're giving them the funds in order to purchase the trees so that we can then plant them.
Yeah, because that was something last year when a bunch of Arbor Day events were all canceled because it was the beginning of COVID. I met up with Bonnie and she gave me 200 little seedlings that were supposed to be planted, but of course the events were canceled, so we called it our tree rescue. And we left them at some of our ocean-friendly establishments for people to come pick up as a way to like drive some business to the ones that were still open, like safely, and get people still able to do things in the environment, solo projects. And that went over like so well that, like you said, everyone was so excited about trees as a way to get involved. There's just like something about trees. And then that was also when we had those discussions with the commercial fishermen that Larry was talking about earlier. That was one of, hands down, like one of the hugest concerns from that community as well, was like, we're losing our trees. There's so much.
Oh, is that right? Oh, that's so good to hear. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that's something that we definitely want to focus on more this year too. So good to know. I don't know. I'm not sure if there's tree people up here who just deal with trees. I feel like there might be one group, but I'll look into that, reach out to them. But
yeah, and we can, you know, just like we did last time, and we can help you out. That is not a problem.
Cool.
Getting trees is not a problem for us. We were just trying to figure out a way to make it easier more for us. Yeah. So wait, I had something else to say to you along those lines. Yeah, you know, I mean, we do have a bit of a challenge because North Carolina is known for what do you call it? The people that cut down trees. Like, you know, that used to be a thriving business, and then it went way down, and now it's on its way up again because, you know, this company. And I don't know if you are familiar with Enviva, but what Enviva does is it claims to take, you know, dead trees or, you know, nothing that's of any value, don't look here, but they are taking our old growth trees. In fact, this is what's really sad about what I'm telling you about what happened in 2018 with Hurricane Florence, is that a lot of those trees, instead of going to that company, they went in the landfill. They got grounded up and went in the landfill. I mean, just think of the stupidity of taking trees and sticking them in the landfill. And that's, you know, that's that.
Hey, Bonnie, are we talking about landfills in North Carolina, or are you talking about LCID landfills? Because landfill, like Subtitle D landfills in North Carolina have a ban on yard waste, so that material would go into an LCID landfill, but it literally cannot go into a Subtitle D.
It went into our local landfill because Joe Solomon was pissed off because it ate up so much of his landfill.
Yeah, so, but what I mean is that it did go into his LCID landfill, which is a land clearing and inert debris landfill. It's an unlined facility, basically.
Yes, yeah, but still, it went in the landfill.
Oh yeah, it totally sucks. I just want to clarify
you know?
that.
Yeah, it's not like I mean, he was really upset because it ate up a lot of the space that he had reserved for the normal things, right? Now, I'm just saying that could have gone to that company that's taking all of our trees. Where, I mean, how could you not see that? You know, we were driving, they had like 3 different locations where people could drop off their trees. I'm talking like football fields of trees, football fields. And it was absolutely insane, but okay, I digress about the trees. But yeah, so if you guys want to figure out a way to connect with us because we have people that have trees and we can get you trees.
Yeah, we'll do. We've got a lot to talk about now, Bonnie. But yeah, I'll definitely be getting up with you about that too. Thank you.
You know what I'm thinking? I think we join Lisa when she goes on her vacation and we go and camp out with Lisa and
Yeah.
explore these ideas.
Oh yeah.
For the
I'm all
planet.
about it. Hey, Bonnie, while y'all are talking about trees, this made me think of this because the other day Larry was asking me what was going on with the port in Morehead City and like what's coming in the port, what's going out of the port. And I hadn't really paid attention to it in several years because I know that they were dealing a lot with wood chips, but they haven't been doing that. And you know, you can big time see and smell it when that's happening, but that hasn't been happening in a while. But what I've noticed over the past several weeks is that much of the material, if not like 90% or more of the material coming via train from the port and also from the bigger hauling trucks coming from the port. Actually, I'm looking at one coming right now. It's treated lumber. Yeah, treated lumber. So I don't know like where it's coming from or whatever, but anyway, food for thought might be something to look into with the project that you're working on there with the NC Wildlife Federation.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I got to write that down, Lisa. So wait,
No,
you're
this-
telling me that treated lumber is coming in? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it must be coming into the port and then being shipped out via train and truck.
Lisa, is that the one that says like Vida or starts with a V on the side of it?
Yeah, something like that. I'll get a snapshot of it next time one of them go
Yeah,
by.
that's been going on quite a while.
And then what is it treated with?
I don't know the normal stuff they treat lumber with. I don't know. I don't mean to sound like weird or anything, but I have no idea what treated lumber is treated with.
I don't either.
It's not good stuff.
Formaldehyde for one.
Yeah.
Did you guys see the study on, and I'm probably going to mess this up because I sent it to the president of POP, that 75% of our active duty firemen have cancers or died or are dying from the PFOS. PFOS, because they're exposed to it all day and all night. It's on their skin. And they're saying, so when they go to a fire, because so much of what we have in our houses now are plastic, all that smoke, even though they're wearing masks and everything, they're inhaling the chemicals, the dioxins, the trash from all the plastics in our houses. And you think about like the PVC flooring and the fabric for the furniture. And yeah, I will try to, I'm going to see if I can find that so you guys can see it. Because the number was so high, he's like, Bonnie, there's no way that's right. And I'm like, so I sent him the article and yeah. So you think about all these chemicals that are put into stuff. I think that's kind of the problem. It's even the problem with the plastics, you know, like it's not the plastic so much, it's all the crap they put in it that makes it so damning. And it's the same with the wood that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what's really that's what was really scary to me about the burning going on in the Caymans is that, you know, when you look at the materials piled up, and it's not, I mean, it's certainly not anybody that lives there's fault that this is happening. And if you know, the amount of marine debris specifically that's washing up is much more than they could possibly handle with the infrastructure that they have, and maybe even given some of the infrastructure recommendations that people would recommend not considering that marine debris accumulating. But when you look at the types of materials like PVC pipe, aerosols, those drums of hazardous cleaning materials, these are things that are being open air burned, and in very close proximity to folks that are doing it not knowing what's then in the air. So it's just, you know. And that's not to say that we don't have that very same thing happening in the backyard next to where we live, because there are still people in North Carolina that use burn barrels. And when you look at the evolution of the materials, which Nina and almost every speaker has talked about, and certainly Blada spoke about during his keynote, is that, you know, if you look at the evolution of materials that have been shipped into Haiti, you know, they were dealing with, you know, organic materials, and, you know, the packaging was organic materials, you know, and then it was being switched to plastics. Well, the folks were still then managing the materials in the same way. It's just that they're not going anywhere like the organic materials were. And the environmental impacts of what they're doing with it has changed. So anyway, soapbox.
Here's the line. But over the past 3 decades, cancer has emerged as the leading cause of death for firefighters across the country, making up 75% of active duty firefighters' deaths in 2019.
Yeah, so I interviewed, while I was on Little Cayman, I interviewed one of Bill who spoke on the island panel, one of his colleagues that works there at the international school. That school is just down Prevailing Wind from that landfill that you saw the photo of it on fire as I was leaving. I interviewed her and just wanted to learn more about the student demographics and, you know, how many times have you guys been evacuated? And then she offered up this information to me. And that information was that she, at that time I interviewed her, had 4 students under the age of 10 in her classroom alone that had some type of cancer.
That's just disgusting. We had 1 kid in my entire time as a kid, 1. Now I'm old, so I mean, but really, I'm 61, 1, and there are kids that, just like what you're saying, have so many kids that have cancer or some kind of serious health problem, whether it be diabetes, you know, 4th grade diabetes, like, are you kidding me? So yeah. Oh, that's what
I have to go to my mean sister's birthday, but before
mean sister, what?
before I do, why are they cutting down the trees?
Oh, yeah, I was trying to explain that. So basically a lot of greenwashing. So in the UK, they don't really have any trees left. So this is part of their green energy. They're basically taking trees from the United States. These trees are treated with coal, which most people do not know that, pelletized and treated with coal, and then they're shipped to the UK as green energy. It's absolutely disgusting. And it's not just here, South Carolina, a couple other southern states that are basically forfeiting their trees. And part of it is just to keep the lumberjack economy going. But it's really sad because we are losing so many of our old growth trees just to development, right? So we've got development, we've got this, and then we have these storms that are knocking down our trees. Mm-hmm. So, and not to mention that there really is, it's a small percentage. I want to say maybe 15% of old growth trees still exist in this country. That means that we've already mowed them down and replanted. And the only places that you'll find real, truly old growth tree is actually in Western North Carolina on the border of Tennessee. So there's a small patch there, and then the redwoods in California. We have literally replanted all of the trees for the most part. Now there'll be some that are really old, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember being in the Congaree National Forest or Park in South Carolina, And I didn't even know that pine trees were supposed to get that big, but it was so swampy though that it was like one of the few places that hadn't been developed yet. And I see pine trees all the time and had no idea that they're like, 5 times the size of a person. But I also wanted to mention too, and if Larry's still on, he might have something to say, but when we're talking about the Inviva and their tree pellet process and how greenwashed it is, it's also super important to note that the places where they do all this production and the facilities that they put in North Carolina and other southern states are going to be pretty much all in close proximity to low-income impacted communities. And so there's a huge environmental justice piece of this that's happening in our country, and then this greenwashing that we see over like in Europe. And if you don't know, then you don't know. And someone's telling you about this great new green energy, if you don't do your own research, like so many people just blindly believe it, and we're seeing so many repercussions on the other side of the world. So
And Becca, if I can jump in there, yeah, there's a lot of greenwashing going on in North Carolina right now, and something that kind of relates to what we're just talking about is this issue of biomass, the use of biomass in making pellets. But guess what's coming next, big time, is to be using the waste from the poultry industry to use either to burn for energy or to include in these pellets. So there's another whole waste stream that's coming into this process. And then if you haven't heard anything about it recently, there's this thing of biogas where we're now taking hog poop and capturing the methane from it and turning that into energy in under the guise of being renewable energy. But this whole use of the trees is it's absurd. We just take old growth trees, grind them up, send them across the ocean so they can burn them over there. It's absurd.
And the only reason why it's economical is because it's subsidized by their government.
Exactly.
So, there are people in the UK that are fighting this tooth and nail, and we should probably connect those groups with us. Because this conversation needs to be had. And what you had said, Becca, about it happening in poor communities. So this whole processing of taking trees and turning them into pellets, there's an enormous amount of emissions from that, not healthy emissions at all. And not only that, because those trucks are constantly running in with 100 acres a day, so there's a lot of traffic. And so these poor communities, that's where they set up shop, right? So they entice them by saying, we're going to create all these jobs by having this, industrial factory here to take your trees and turn them into pellets. But there are so many harmful emissions, both from the trucks coming in, but also the noise, that's noise pollution. And it's all day and all night. These people have to hear these trucks hauling in these trees and then taking the particulate that ends up in the air because of the way they have to process these trees. So another social injustice angle to this as well.
Bonnie, do you know the history of this company, and or like, even if it wasn't them, maybe like the evolution of like, when did we go from it's like scrap wood to, or like wood that we couldn't move anyways, to mowing down forest? Or was it never that? Because I feel like, years and years and years ago when I worked for the state, it wasn't a project that I wasn't involved with, but we were trying to help companies that needed like wood chips, like for like boiler, type of thing, like find that. But I thought it was like more like waste chips. But I mean, so I don't know, do you know, like, have they been active in North Carolina for a long time, or
yeah, I don't know.
Always like BS and
No, I think it started out with the best intentions, just like plastic, it started with the best intentions. I think it started out that way, and then it just got greedier. I mean, as their business grew, they had to come up with more resources. And now, I mean, it's such a huge industry because, I mean, think about it. They're in the UK, you know, selling our trees. So yeah, I think it started there. But then the other caveat to all of that is people are now charcoaling with these pellets. Those are your trees, you know? And I guess it makes, you know, you can really cook a good burger on it. But I mean, at what expense? Like my niece contacted me and she's like, that's how I'm heating my house right now. Can you mind not saying anything? And it's like, and she's up in New York, right? So, you know, it's, people don't want to hear it, but that's the reality. You know, you create that shift. We're like, oh damn, we can't survive on just taking the scraps. We got to now take down trees. But meanwhile, like if I was in charge of that industry and I was in this area and knew that we were losing a lot of trees, like I would be down here saying, I'll take that lattice tree and I'll give you $5 for every acre. And like Wilmington would have been, hell yeah, we'll take your $5, take the trees. No one was doing that. I mean, think how crazy that is. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm really curious about why not. I mean, is it that they, I don't know, like I have no knowledge of this industry or this practice or whatever, but yeah, like why not? Is it tangled up in, you know, people's patio furniture too and trash, or is it because like there's too much stuff in it? But yeah, you're right. It's like this, and like communities, if you think about it from their perspective, I mean, they spend so much time and effort and money dealing with this stuff too, that, you know, I mean, it's a huge burden for them. We've got to, you know, find these temporary storage sites for it and then move it off site and then eventually maybe landfill some of it like you were talking about. And so
yeah, I mean, they grounded, I took videos because I actually went to 2 of these sites here and they probably had to rent the lot. So it used to be a driving range and they rented this lot and just everybody was bringing their trees here and then they were grinding them, right? Into just nothing. And it was so shocking. I mean, it was, I would say that some of these mounds were like 4 stories high, and I am not exaggerating. And to think that somebody that sells trees, you know, like, wow, this was a gift to you. How did you not see that? So in our last symposium, Sarah had gave a presentation from NOAA. She had given a presentation about how much of those trees ended up in the landfill. And I was like, tonnage wise, like the comparison of how much tonnage ended up in the landfill of trees or natural debris as opposed to you know, synthetic debris. And I wanted to vomit because I was like, I know about this in Viva, like, where's the broker here? This was a deal of the century, right? But no, it ended up, whether it's capped or uncapped, whatever, it ended up in a landfill, you know? So we got a lot of work to do.
yeah, I'm so curious to know, like, if like from any of the disaster debris folks, or, you know, the people that work with FEMA to get reimbursed, or like, you know, has there ever been those connections made, you know, between a company like that and, you know, anyways, especially if they, I mean, I remember that from, you know, back at the state days. I mean, they were hungry for more material. They really wanted it. And so, you know, I don't know. Is it like, can they store it too? Is it like too much at one time, or, you know, like, does it degrade so that it can't be used for that purpose after a certain amount of time? I don't know.
Yeah.
So many questions.
A lot of questions. But I think it's a lot about, like, even what the symposium is about is how do we connect the people on both sides of the field to talk, to figure these things out. Obviously, no one was talking to them. There was a total breakdown in communication. And I don't know, as a company, how you didn't see that as an opportunity. I mean, it kind of makes you wonder, like, oh, we have all these contracts with these landowners. We really can't afford to take that on right now, much like what you're saying. But oh my God, I mean, they need to be factoring that in. Oh, a storm is coming. There's going to be another load of wood coming, you know.
Yeah.
Like, they need to factor that into their model if that's the case. It just broke my heart because I knew about in Viva and I knew they weren't taking advantage of these trees, and so crushing.
We don't have like 500-year storms anymore. It's like 5-year storms or 2-year
Yeah,
storms.
500-day storms.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh.
Well, it looks like it's down to 3 of us. Now,
I
Kayla.
know.
Hi.
So Kayla has been, is now an intern for Plastic Ocean Project, and talk about enthusiasm. So
Thanks.
she's been coming to our cleanups, and now we've got her doing the research with NC State. So she's been helping us process these samples, which is a bear, by the way. Right? Kayla,
Yes,
you want to talk a
absolutely.
little bit about like the research side of stuff that you've been helping us with?
So I've only done the chemical digestion part of it so far. I'm brand new, so there hasn't been a lot of time for me to learn yet with the symposium and everything coming up. But I have done the chemical digestion, and it took, I think we were there for 5 hours just for 5 samples, just for that one step. Oh yeah, with 5 people. So it's very time consuming, and it's a lot more than I thought it was going to be. But I'm very excited to learn. I think the next step for me is to learn how to do the drying process. So we'll get in there maybe next week. I don't know. I'll talk to Josh and see if when would be a good time for me to come in with him. But,
yeah, and you know, the other side of it is the whole COVID thing. So,
yeah.
you know, we had 5 students in a lab, and then that night or the next morning, I guess it was, I get an email from one of my students, oh, I was just tested positive for COVID. You're like, ah, you know, because, you know, now we got to tell everybody, and everybody has to get tested and be in
Quarantine.
isolation and quarantine, you know, like it's just the whole like, yeah, adds another level of difficulty. But
I did have 2 questions about the trees for trash. How do you decide the sites for the trees to be planted?
that is why we work with other groups. So, and the one I didn't mention was what we're doing down at Carolina Beach, right? So, Heather, there's a lake there that they ended up on one end of it just putting stone, you know, to use as to prevent erosion. And they're finding out that that's not the best solution, right? And so there's one woman that was the charge of all of this, and she decided that, you know, if we could just build up the banks with plants and trees, we wouldn't have to worry about erosion. So we decided to partner with them as well to help pay for those plants and trees as through our Trees for Trash campaign.
Okay,
So that's.
So you were partnered with the Alliance for Cape Fear Trees for this last planting they just did downtown.
Yeah.
And you said that you would donate the trees. So does that come from the cleanups that you are in charge of, that you host? So those 84 trees that we've already like put in the bag, I guess, is that what's being donated? I'm sorry,
yeah.
I'm trying to think about how to phrase it.
You got this. So like for that particular planting, it was another group that actually funded those trees. So we don't usually give any money until about July, when we have a certain number that we need to plant. And then we start giving money for different trees that are going to be planted. But we haven't dispersed any funding for that yet, for this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does Plastic Ocean Project host their own tree planting event at like the end of the year, or do they host multiple throughout the year?
Yeah, we usually do our own.
Okay.
But last year, especially because of COVID, it was easier just to say, look, we are going to help sponsor planting trees. So like we've been working with the city, right? And this year it's the city. So we're giving money to the city, which is really weird. But we're giving money to the city to pay for the trees to be planted.
Okay.
So,
cool.
That's,
Just trying to.
it's a smart partnership. If if your goal is really to get trees planted, and when I worked for the town of Cary, I ran a volunteer program that was in part beautification and litter reduction and stuff like that. And I mean, that was a challenge. It's like where to find a place to plant the trees, and
Yes.
it was like a hard, people would call you all the time and be like, I want to volunteer and I want to plant trees. And you'd be like, I mean, it was kind of like my least favorite call to get sometimes, because I was like, oh God, let me go try to find a place that wouldn't just get, like wouldn't get neglected. It could be taken care of, or that you could just put a bunch of trees into or whatever. And that was challenging. So I think that's a real smart partnership to like work with people who kind of do that, to make sure the trees stay healthy and grow, and then
Right.
takes
Right.
that work out of it. Like, should I just start guerrilla planting some trees over here?
Well, Heather, you really hit the nail on the head, because it's not about just planting trees. And when I was saying that the Forest Service was counting these, these planting, these corporations were doing, it's like, first of all, you can't plant a forest. And then who's minding those trees to make sure that they make it? Well, what they end up doing, this is really so tragic. And the Forest Service like counts this as a forest. So they clear cut, then they throw down pesticides, and they throw down herbicides, and they throw down like all kinds of stuff so the plants will grow, and they monoculture. And they're usually planting those loblollies. That's what they're planting. And the tree service is counting that as a forest. So therefore, when they do the numbers, they'll tell everyone that we only lost 2% of our forests, because they count those as forests. This is madness. These are people that know what a forest is, and they're counting monoculture as a forest. And it really gets me. I'm like, this isn't my area of expertise, but for dear God's sake, you are educated people. How dare you put that down on paper, that that's considered a forest, because they planted something that no one's minding the store. No one's making sure that those trees are going to grow. No one's making sure that they have water. And not only that, they get rid of anything that's a hardwood, because they take much longer to grow. So it's very disturbing. Believe me, Bomb would like to go toe to toe with them, but then I would I'd probably end up dead.
We should have a pay-per-view event.
I got your back, Bonnie.
I'd watch it.
Thank you.
We should definitely make this panel next year. Like, bring somebody from the Forest Service and in vivo here, and just it could be over happy hour,
Yes, like let's get drunk together and you tell us why you think what you're doing is so good, okay?
But tell us what you really think.
Lordy. And this is the thing about activism, right? Is like, it's a freaking one rabbit hole after another. I mean, I just started with plastic in the ocean, and, as I presented, went from the ocean to the beach, to the watersheds, to, now I'm freaking planting trees. It's like, oh.
Rebecca's right though. It's like, man, if you're going to give away some tree seedlings, people will be coming out the woodwork for that.
Yeah.
That's a really great tie-in to give them to ocean friendly establishments. And
yeah, and then everyone was
I think that's such a good idea.
One little tree that they brought home. So, and I still have people sending me pictures of their tree. I have a tree in a bucket. I live in an apartment, but I kept one. But Heather, I actually used to work for the town of Cary too. I worked at Hemlock Bluffs Nature Preserve. Yeah,
Yes.
and that's so funny that you mentioned that about like people wanting to plant trees just to do it without like consulting with people who know what they're talking about. Because I'm no expert either, but we had somebody doing a tree planting project on our land actually in the nature preserve, which is a state protected area, because the hemlock trees there are so endangered, and we have a micro ecosystem or microclimate of bluffs there, so it's like just cold enough for these hemlock trees to really thrive, when normally they're only found in the mountains and have just like really succumbed to this woolly adelgid blight, and there's almost none left. So it's like a very ecologically unique park. If you're ever in the Piedmont area, go. It's so awesome. But yeah, people just coming onto our land trying to plant trees just to like plant trees. So
Oh, you're muted, Bonnie.
You know, it's kind of like, well, those are trees. We'll just make it part of the family, you know?
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what you're saying, Bonnie, too, that like how much value there is in a diverse old growth forest. Like not all forests are created equal, I guess. You can have the best intentions, but knowing how to direct them really requires a lot of partnership and community outreach, and making sure that you know how to do that and who are the right people to talk to and who's already doing the work and who you can support is like so important in this project and anything that we all do. We're all in similar lines of work, and it's just a really good thing to keep in mind.
It comes down to diversity. It's like what you want to do. You know, we've been excluding people of color for centuries, right? Like centuries. And what are we losing by doing that, right? Because like I said, they have something to give to the equation, but they've been silenced. It's Blada, it's the people in Haiti. You know, I mean, if I was going to mention this to people, if you haven't, I strongly urge you to do a little research on how Haiti was able to get out of the grips of the French. It's an incredible story, and they didn't do it with guns. But they were able, and they were Black people that came together. They were not even allowed, not to only not speak their language, but they were not allowed to speak French. So they had to communicate through body language. And they rose up and they formed a coup, and they got the French out of there. But because of that, and because they were Black, no one would do business with them. So no one, I mean, think about it. They're on an island and no one would ship any resources to them. And this is one of the reasons why they are in the situation that they're in, is because none of the colonies were willing to work with them. And so they were very poor. They didn't have a whole lot to contribute. They did have like sugarcane and tobacco, I think, are two of their most prominent products that they can grow. But, you know, unfortunately, because they were ruled by white people, they didn't have the ability, because they weren't taught the skills, how to develop their own government, you know, how to develop as a society. And it's such a fascinating story, and really how, even though they gained independence, the white man still controlled the success of this island, and why it's so needy. So there's, and I know I'm going off on a tangent, and I will circle back, but I am going to get back to where we were, I promise you. I listened to way too much Garrison Keillor. Anyway, so, oh shit, now I've lost my train of thought. So they have the highest per capita of human services, of nonprofits helping them, highest per capita in the world, and they're getting worse off. And that's because, like Blada said, people are leaving junk there, right? People come in with these great ideas and they leave their trash there. They bring in food and packaging and they leave the packaging there. They don't have anything in place for removing the trash, which only trashes their country even more. Something that's very temporary, the food, and yet something that lasts forever, the trash. And so we come up with all these ideas on, let's help them. You're not helping them by giving them stuff, you know, teach someone how to fish and they can feed themselves the rest of their lives, right? Well, so the same thing with healthy ecosystems in the environment, right? So when I talk about you can't plant a forest, if you plant just white people, right, you're not going to have the diversity of really creative ideas that can create the harmony, that can create the cool music, that can create all those things that really make a society work and excited. I mean, you can have a society work, but if it doesn't have the arts, the music, the creativity, then it really is 1984, right? And it's the same with the forest, and it's the same with what we do with people. And that's why I really got excited about your idea for your program with working with the less privileged, because I think once we empower people of color, we're all going to benefit from it, you know, all of us, not just, you know, doing them a favor. No. This is about us being more harmonious, and then that creativity can grow.
Mm-hmm.
Same with forests. That's where we get the mushrooms, you know?
Oh yeah, that helped the trees talk to each other.
Yes. You read that story. All right, good.
So
So,
my great grandmother just passed recently, and we're actually cleaning out her house right now. She's a hoarder. She's been keeping her pill bottles for years. And I was doing some research earlier about what to do with them, because I didn't know if you could recycle them. You can. But then there's also a company that ships them to, third world countries that could use medicine bottles. But is that the same thing that Vlado was talking about? More plastics, yes, they're containers, and you could use them as storage containers, I guess. But is that kind of the same thing? Would they actually want them for medicines or for things like that? I don't know. I'm
No,
stuck with a
those
whole
are,
bunch, and I don't know what to do with them.
see, that's the questions that people need to ask. You know, we're so quick to say, oh, they want them, and we just ship them over there, you know? We really do need to be asking the questions that you're asking, like, do you really need them? We had this similar situation with the fires in Australia. So somebody on Facebook had posted that they were making these little pouches for different size animals because they were burned, and so they had to have like these little cloth compartments to put them in. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw that.
And so, you know, Plastic Ocean Project was like, hell yeah, we've got a place where you can come, bring your sewing machines. We've got all kinds of people that can do the cutting and the ironing and the sewing. And 34 people showed up for this event, you know? And so now we're packing them up to send them. And because the whole world was doing this, they had this huge flood of these things that, you know, like God knows where they ended up, right? All with the most just precious intentions. But we really do have to ask, you know?
Hey,
Is that
Bonnie,
really, yeah,
can I jump in here and respond to
please.
Kayla? Kayla, one of the things that I've always looked at, you and your thing with the prescription bottles,
Uh-huh.
why don't they just say, like we used to do with real bottles, send them back, let them clean them up and reuse them again?
That, I feel like that would be a great idea,
The
but I don't know if
pharmaceutical,
like sanitation
well,
laws or something.
that's kind of what the claim would be at first. But I mean, we can clean pretty much anything else out. You know, I'm not saying we need to continue producing those bottles, but you know, right now there's really nothing else that you can do with them. And think
Right.
about the amount of well, you talked about, you know, with your grandmother. Sorry to hear that you just lost her recently.
Thanks.
But you know, why isn't that industry also stepping up? You look at what the pharmaceutical industry is doing. Everything is either vacuum packed or pouch packed or in a bottle, and that's how we distribute our pharmaceuticals. So your thoughts about the pharmaceutical industry and the bottles is great.
Thanks. It's something that happened to me personally, I guess, or it just kind of got thrown in my face, and I don't know. I guess when it becomes more personal, you start thinking about it more.
Well, no, I think, well, all right. So when you think about, I got to go and pick up this medication, right? So you go to your local Walgreens. It's not like they're already in a container. They have to pull a container off the shelf to fill it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So much like what you're saying, like that could be done on a local level. You know, they could come up with a way to steam clean them at very high temperatures. Just steam clean them. because it's not like there's food waste in them, but you could steam clean them and then they're ready, and they could, in the steam cleaning would take off the label, and they could, like, there could be a way of doing that. And that may be a really good cottage industry, because you think of all the pharmacies in one community. Imagine if there was one person like yourself that was taking in all those medicine bottles, cleaning them, sanitizing them, you know, putting them in a Ziploc bag or some kind of container that they could be then delivered to the Walgreens or the CVS's or whatever. You know, that's how we have to be thinking, that you're not shipping them across the ocean, right? But how do we do this locally so that we reduce that demand, so that then the demand ends up in places where it needs to be? And even those people, right? Like, could we set up that kind of situation where these poor countries are actually repurposing the bottles using the same methodology?
These are fun ideas.
They are a fun idea. This is what's
I was
great.
thinking about it all day yesterday, but again, I'm not good with the public speaking. Sorry, guys. So I just get nervous.
She is better than you think, and she's got like a room full of passion, which is all you ever need. I mean, when you think about Blada, right? And that's why I thank Lisa so much for having Blada be our keynote. You know, Blada's not at all about polish, because he's not, that's not his focus. Your focus should never be on being, I gotta be perfect, I gotta say everything so perfectly. No, you have to think about what you really want to say. What is the most important thing that's going to come out of my mouth? And when you really listen to Blada, you heard all of the passion. I want to fix this problem. I want to help my country. I want to do it on a local level. I want to do it on a national level for my country. And it was, you know, him coming here and seeing how things work, right? Because how would he have any idea? If he stayed in Haiti his whole life, he would never know what a good system looks like for him to try to get a good system in his country, right? So because he was willing to step out of his comfort zone, because he had the passion to want to try to fix or address an issue in his own country, it didn't matter how he said anything that he said. It was all what we all read between the lines about the passion, and because of passion, what great things this one man is doing. So don't ever get caught up in like, oh, I don't sound smart enough. Don't lead with that. I mean, you think about Greta. Now, she is very smart, and no doubt, but she also has like autism, or she's on the spectrum, right? I mean, she has her whole host of things that she's dealing with in here. But when she led with her passion, look what came out, right? So always, don't ever apologize, ever. Always lead with your foot, with your passion, and you're gonna get where you gotta go. And maybe this is gonna take us somewhere, because I love talking about this. Like, yeah, what about those bottles? And why do we have to, you know, throw them away? Who said so? We let somebody out there say that, no, they need to be thrown away, until somebody comes along and says, actually, I've got a plan that we don't have to throw them away. We can put them through the system, and then they can be available for our community CVSs or businesses, so that they can use them. And now you've created a market, all because of your great grandmother not throwing them away because it bothered her. That's why she didn't throw them away. It wasn't she didn't throw them away because she didn't feel like it or she was too lazy. She looked at that bottle and said, this has to have value. Like, I don't feel right about throwing this away. Right?
She did that for everything. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
With good reason. She was not
She
wrong.
uses them for storage containers. She puts nails and all sorts of stuff. She uses them for organizing his garage and all sorts of stuff. So
That's right. Because she was smarter than us. Because she saw value in this material. And maybe that's the message you take with you, you know, from her. How cool is
thanks.
that?
Thanks. Well, I'm inspired. I might think about this more and I might work on that. That sounds fun. Okay. Thanks for the motivation.
Oh,
It'd be
wait.
cool to make like companies like CVS or Walgreens or something encouraged to have take back programs where they could, you know, at least, I mean, could they be the hub of collection, just like bags? You know, if you're going back to the grocery store and you have,
Ooh,
gotta go back anyways, get more pills.
It's a good point.
good
I don't know
one.
what they do with them
Heather,
from there, but
that's so
Could there be
smart.
like a credit? Maybe.
right.
I don't know. Healthcare is very expensive anyway, and prescriptions are pretty expensive.
Yeah, they're making bank off of those. No, I love Heather. That's a brilliant idea.
Mhm.
A take back program, just like the plastic bags. That's so smart. And they don't need to be like melted down and recreated. Not at all. Oh my God, I love this. Laura, I see you up here. Are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah, now talk about creativity, okay? This one here, if Plastic Ocean Project had money, this is somebody I would love to hire. I mean, she's incredibly creative, but then she's also really great with talking to really young people, explaining very complex issues in the most simplest, beautiful, engaging way. So I would love to hear from you.
Well, this has me thinking actually about my home life rather than my work life, because I had a baby last 2 years ago at this point almost. He's almost a year and a half. And when I was like thinking about having a baby, I was like, well, there's so much waste that usually goes into having children. And I was like, that's not going to be me, because I have to practice what I preach, first of all, and I'm not going to contribute all of that to the landfills. So we cloth diaper my son, and we will cloth diaper my future babies with the cloth diapers we already have. And instead of using like the milk storage bags for when you're pumping and stuff, we use mason jars that I'll be able to reuse with future babies. And didn't buy those pouches, those squeeze pouches for feeding. I like made his food, and I was really dedicated to it. And so there are definitely things that you can do, and there's definitely those alternatives. It just takes some digging sometimes to find
Yes, it
them.
does. The
And
will.
Bonnie, my the grant ends in May, and then I'm gonna probably have some time on my hands. So maybe I need to be a more active pop volunteer.
Oh my gosh. Let's find you some money.
I
Seriously.
know. Yeah. We will need to do that too, but
But you might want like a little break in the action. You know, maybe for a month or so.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen to your program?
Well, I'm going to talk all about it tomorrow morning too. For
Oh,
anyone who
okay.
joins, but I can give you a little sneak peek.
Yeah, give us a little preview.
Yeah, we are working on a lot of things to kind of extend the life of the grant. So since we've been doing it all virtually, we've recorded a version of it that I'm going to edit so that teachers can just play it in their classroom. And then at the points where I usually pause for discussion with the students or for questions, they'll just pause the video and talk about it with each other. And so a lot of teachers that I'm working with, I've worked with for multiple years. So they know some of the content. Some of the teachers have seen me do the program like 5 times. They could probably do it themselves. And so we're hoping that will help keep it alive, because they'll be able to do it on their own time. And we're going to create a teacher's guide to have all the resources that we've made, and then have like a way for you to incorporate it standards wise into the classroom. So that's one thing that we're working on. I actually emailed you a little bit ago because we're planning to do an art contest. And I wanted to see if you wanted to, if Pop wanted to be a part of it. And it would be really not a lot of work for you to do, just like help us spread the word about it. But we're thinking a virtual art contest. So students or anybody really would have to go out and collect trash. They have to incorporate some of their trash that they've collected and a turtle into this art that they create, and then submit a picture of it. And then during Earth Week, we would post them on Facebook and get as many organizations as possible to share it. And then the ones that have the most likes would be the winners.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Ooh.
Yes.
That is
I'm
our
in.
plan. We'll see.
Yeah. Well,
Hey,
we've
Laura.
got your back for sure. You know, that is such a great idea. And it pulls in the artists to to scientific issues. And I don't know if you guys all know who Laura is, but she's one of the lead characters in Marine Quest. And Marine Quest is has been around for quite some time, and there are many adults now that have gone through their program that are now living the dream. They actually ended up either doing marine sciences or something along the lines of that passion that was built out of Marine Quest. And I know because I see a lot of them, and they tell me about, oh yeah, I got my start with Marine Quest. That's when I fell in love with my passion for the ocean or marine life, or marine technology, right? I mean, that's an up and coming, although it's been around a long time, but coming up with these innovative ideas, and how do we figure out our way around or use technology to solve some of these issues. So last night I was on a call with Nina Butler with Ralph Shammy, and Ralph Shammy is calculating the value of a whale alive as opposed to the value of a whale dead. And his numbers are $2 million that whale in services gives back to us by keeping it alive, as opposed to $70,000 what it's worth dead. And so there's countries now that are starting to recognize, like, we got to keep these whales alive because they're actually fertilizing the ocean so that the plankton lives, so that the plankton feed the fish that feed the fish that feed us. Like, there are actually countries that are figuring out that biodiversity is super important, and the whales are at the helm of this diversity. So in Chile, they are now mandating these systems where they have, it's a low ping, but they are actually technology that can tell you not only where whales are, but what type of whale, how big it is, and at what depth the whale is. And it's not to hunt the whale, it's to tell the shipping industry where not to be to hurt these whales. And that's coming. Like, that's hope. That's what we need to have happen, right? So when you're over there, and you may think what you do is not such a big deal, but when you're teaching these young kids, you're teaching the ones that are coming up with that technology in order to save the whales and the sea turtles. And it's really important. So I just thought I'd give a pitch for
really
Marine.
Excited during the program, and I'll start to say something like that, like, I'm teaching you because you're the one who can help make a difference. And they all look at me like, what is this lady talking about? But the teachers get it, and they know, and I know that it's making a difference. So
yeah, it is truly. So many of them got, because when they were young. I mean, me personally, y'all got time for a story? Okay.
Of course.
So when I was a graduate student, might I say, a very old graduate student at UNCW studying plastics in the ocean, I was also taking a course in memoir. And so the professor of the class was like pleading with me to, tell the story about the research I'm doing on plastics. And I was like, I don't want to tell that story. I got other stories I want to tell, But she's like, please, everybody really wants you to tell that story. So I told the story, and I pissed off a lot of people because I was basically saying that we had this throwaway society, and that, we throw away our children, we throw away our marriages and our relationships. It's so disposable at this point that, we don't work to keep a relationship. It's not working, throw it out, get a new one, right? And I really rattled some feathers by saying that. I'm just telling you. And so, we're workshopping my little piece that I had put together, and there's this one guy that he is not having it. He is not appreciating that I'm associating human relationships with trash, okay? So, but I have to sit there and listen to all the debates, and then at one point they open up the debate for them to ask me questions. And he's right there. He's the first one, and he's ready to go, and he's like, Bonnie, why do you care so much? And like, I am not kidding you guys, but I'm sitting there and my brain takes me all the way back, and I'm 12 years old, like 12 or 13, and I'm just starting to be aware of my physicalness. My mother had a metal bread box, and I'm telling you, this is what popped in my head when this guy asked me this question. I'm standing in front of this bread box, like doing my, looking at my hair. I'm not kidding. And my mother is cooking dinner and she has like ground beef in her hand and she's peeling off the cellophane and then she's putting the ground beef in her hand. She's peeling off the styrofoam bottom. And she says, and this is in the 70s, right? I'm old. And she says this rhetorical question, and I swear to you, I was half paying attention. She says, where does this stuff go? I heard it sticks around for about 1,000 years. And that's what popped in my head when he asked me the question, why do you care so much? So now my mother, I dedicated my thesis to her saying that, you know, explaining that story and to say, I found the answer, right? I found it in the middle of the ocean, right? So, you know, that's really, you know, why we need to be working with young people and not to pound it in their heads, because obviously my mother did not pound that in my head, but she created enough curiosity that stayed with me until my late 40s when I learned about plastic in the ocean. And somehow, for some reason, and I can't even tell you why, it rattled me to my core that plastic was accumulating thousands of miles away from land, and then it was causing all these problems for marine life. I was from central New York. Like, I wasn't even an ocean person, you know? And so that's why what you do is so important. And I've been able to be on presentations that you've given, the ones that you're doing with the sea turtles. And I just felt like, oh my God, all is right with the world because Laura's teaching these young kids about caring for nature, you know? And
It's
we're all doing
really
it.
my passion, my spark.
Yeah, it's got you. Well, God, I've been talking for like 2 hours, people.
Did you answer that guy that? Were you like, well, see, it was about a bread box, sir. Did you go there like right then?
You know what? I can't even tell you if I even answered that question. I have no idea. But, you know, it was kind of like when I was giving my presentation and they were talking about bioengineering bacteria to eat plastic. You know, it was that kind of faraway look. And that, you know, like you just travel to another space and time. Yeah, it was that same thing. But I don't know that I ever told them that story. I just know that moment was pinnacle.
Yeah.
Pinnacle.
I love that story. That's all.
Yeah, that's super cool. That would be fun one day when we have more time to think about what was, if you could like pinpoint something like in your life, like what would you say was kind of
Sorry, I didn't mean to be a huge distraction.
Yes,
I
yes,
wasn't really going anywhere
distract.
with that.
Oh my goodness sakes. How adorable.
Now, that's just too cute right there.
Yeah.
Wow. That's better than any cat that would be up there.
Although I do like the cat, Heather.
Oh yeah, that was good, but this one, wow.
Oh,
you know what that cat's from, right?
that is so funny.
Bonnie, did you see that cat video?
No, which one?
This cat behind me.
Yeah.
It's the lawyer got stuck in a cat filter. Find it real quick and put it in the chat. And he was talking.
Yeah, put it in there.
Oh my God, he's like, I can't. Hold on, I'm not a cat. I'll see if I can find it real quick while we talk.
Okay.
Yeah, baby is.
So this is a year and a half. What a year and a half looks like.
It is. Can you say hi? Can you wave to them?
Hey, buddy.
We FaceTime a lot, obviously, because, well, my family's not here and COVID too.
Right.
And, but when there's a new person on the screen, he always acts different. He's like, I don't know these people. I'm going to be shy. And it's
yeah. Isn't it funny? Because like in person, you would get that, right? But, you know, from a camera screen, it's creating that same dynamic, right?
Or now when we go out, he's always like, why doesn't this person have a face? Because then they have a mask on.
Yeah.
We don't really go out much either. So he's also like, there's another small child. I didn't know they existed.
Yeah, I mean, there could be a study on that alone, right? Okay, oh my God, let's do this.
Hold on. Is it here? Hold on. All right.
Yeah, it's here,
Yeah.
it's here.
Hold on. We got to add.
Commercial, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I can't even skip this one.
Oh, I gotta, yeah, your sound. We gotta hear your sound. We don't hear the sound.
What's that?
We don't hear it.
Oh,
Yeah, hold, please.
wait. How do I turn on the
When you
volume?
share, you have to share computer audio.
Oh, crap. This is why I'm so glad I didn't have to do this.
Yeah, I know. I'm not good at it.
How do I share?
It might be under your microphone.
Okay, I did share sound. Hold on. Tell me if you can hear this.
If you have a filter turned on
Can you hear
in
it?
the video
You got it.
setting,
Look at him.
you might want to take a
We're
look.
trying to, can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It
in the,
is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here, she's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live, I'm not a cat.
I'm not a cat.
That's really funny.
I love it so much. He's like, I'm here to go forward with it. I'm not a cat.
Yeah, everyone else was so straight faced whenever he said that too. I
Right.
don't know.
Right. How did you not crack up?
Cool.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That was
I know. So hilarious.
next level.
Hey,
It
y'all,
was
I
fun
got, I
talking
gotta,
to you all tonight. I feel like
yeah,
we
I
had a
gotta,
good.
I gotta jump off here, Bonnie. Bonnie, it's always awesome to see you. Love you, girl.
Likewise, Larry.
Yep.
Talk to you soon.
Larry.
Okay, yeah, and I gotta
Stand
go
back
too.
up.
I'm missing another meeting just so I can hang with y'all.
Oh, nice.
Laura, what's your little one's name?
Lucas.
Lucas. Bye, Lucas.
Bye,
Bye,
Lucas.
Lucas.
Everybody say bye, Lucas.
Bye, Lucas.
Oh, that is too much right there.
Yeah.
See y'all tomorrow.
Thank you.
See
All
y'all.
right.
Bye,
See you
guys.
tomorrow, guys. Thank you.
Okay, that was fun.
Yep. Good seeing you, Laura.
Good seeing you too.
Bye.